Hello and welcome to Aliens Revealed Live. I'm your host Dean Caparella here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. From alien abductions to monster-infested ranches, men in black, near-death experiences, close encounter experiences and more, we speak to some of the most amazing people on the planet, ready and willing to share their chilling stories with you. And they all come from the Aliens Revealed Live files here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, asking are extraterrestrials real in a UFO forum is like preaching to the converted. Fact is, though, online forums can still be some of the most inhospitable places for a contact experiencer to tell their story. People now have no problem believing UFOs are real, however, many still balk at someone talking about their contact experience with an ET. UFOs are real, but you're not so sure if aliens are? Then who is piloting the ET craft? Kosta Makreus and Hollis Polk have become somewhat of a power couple within the close encounter community. Although it's a moniker they perhaps would be uncomfortable with, the success they're having worldwide encouraging people to seek the truth about ETs is staggering. Since 2012, they've been at the forefront of a worldwide movement designed to take the power back from unscrupulous government authorities hell-bent on keeping the ET truth from us. Makreus and Polk are answering the "Are extraterrestrials real?" question one person at a time. They're empowering people to make their own contact with ETs. 11,000 peaceful groups in over 100 countries is testament that yes, maybe their people's movement is working. Makreus and Polk head up the ET Let's Talk community. Makreus says it's become a fruitless waiting game, expecting governments to come clean about the presence of extraterrestrials. According to Makreus, more than 1.3 billion adults around the world believe ET civilizations exist and we should communicate with them. More than 50,000 people are part of the ET Let's Talk community. Using the CE5 protocols initially created by Dr. Stephen Greer, groups organise field trips with the intent of making contact with star people. Florida CE5 organiser Mike Merberg said it best in an interview with Aliens Revealed Live early last year when describing the aim of the CE5 movement. He simply says, "Why chase ET when you can invite him or her in for tea?" Makreus says the Let's Talk community is open to everyone. Many who join are contact experiencers searching for a safe environment to relate their stories in. But many members are also people who have never witnessed a UFO sighting or had a contact experience. Are ETs real? Hundreds of millions of people around the world believe they are. The ET Let's Talk community is introducing people to the ET experience every day. Kosta Makreus and Hollis Polk are joining me now. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing, Dean?
I'm pretty good. It's great to have you. We've been wanting to talk to both of you guys for quite some time now because it's a wonderful initiative that you have got going here, and through our friend Mike Merberg, who's brought us together. Let's have a look and find out what it's all about. So I thought first up, let's talk about your community and what it is all about.
Yes. Well, we're the ET Let's Talk community. And my little commercial break here is at etletstalk.com, free membership. I started it in 2014, or actually 2012. And we've grown to about 50,000 people now in more than 100 countries. And the whole premise is that we can and successfully do make contact with many star civilizations that are visiting our planet at this time by teaching people how to do that. And it's a wonderful thing to do because everyday people can do it. And Hollis and I, for example, are good examples of we're just everyday people who had our own experiences a few years ago that were up close and personal that totally convinced us that these civilizations are here. And so I decided that I would organize people worldwide to form a community and to have these monthly meditations where our people join virtually because we're in all the different time zones. Most of us will never meet, but we use our imagination, visualization, and what are called the close encounter of the fifth kind protocols to contact our UFO/ET/ star people friends who then communicate with us. So this is a very interactive, widespread movement, the largest of its kind, that is making this human-initiated interactive communication with star civilizations visiting the Earth. So
Right.
that's it in a nutshell. And there are reasons we're doing that. There's a vision of where this is going to go, and so much more. But basically, that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I don't know if Hollis wants to add anything.
You did a great job.
Yeah, so the CE5 protocol, so how did you come up with those in the beginning?
I didn't come up with those. Those were put out there by Stephen Greer initially. Now, what's happened in the years since is that many groups, once they discover an initial protocol, will customize it. So there's many customized versions of it. But what I will say is that at the very core of it, what's important is to have an attitude of goodwill, an open mind about this experience that you want to have, an open heart, because it's all about the consciousness, about the vibration you're putting out, the place where you're at. That is what announces your presence to some of these civilizations who can detect you by your vibration, by frequency. Because as Nikola Tesla said, the whole universe is nothing but frequency. So the secret sauce to the core of the CE5 protocol, protocols, the many that are out there, at the core is to have a loving intention, goodwill, and openness, an invitation to meet these civilizations instead of having fear, criticism, wanting to kick the tires, taking it lightly and all that. If you approach it in this very serious and loving manner, I find that most people do have experiences.
Yeah.
And that's what's really critical, because then they go from what I call being believers in this phenomenon, maybe believers, into knowers. And that's a very powerful thing, because knowers are the ones then who start talking to their family, to their friends, to their colleagues, and inviting them. And that's how the community grows organically, as people try it on their own and they succeed.
The one thing I would add is I wouldn't necessarily say serious. I would say lighthearted and open communication.
Right, right.
Positive and, definitely a positive expectation. And let's have fun. Let's communicate. Let's see where good this can go.
Yeah. So
joyful is another good word.
Yeah.
Joyful.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it suited to just experiences or people with a bit of curiosity?
It's suited to anybody who has that open mind. There are people who I encounter every day in my community who had experiences that were foisted on them, that were passive, where they saw a UFO or had a more closer experience than just seeing. Those are known as contactees and experiencers. So that kind of happened to them, and maybe they revisit this now years later when they find a community like ours and say, oh, you mean I can repeat that, but I can consciously go after it instead of passively having it happen to me. So there's that group of people who were contacted when younger and then rediscover that they can now step up and do this anytime they want. And then there are people who've maybe never had any experiences, but they're open-minded. They've heard their friends talk about it. They've seen the movies. They've been interested in science fiction. And suddenly they hear about our community and go, you mean they're here and I can contact them? Well, how do I do that? So they're ready for their first experience. And again, if they're open-minded and put the skepticism aside, they're going to make some kind of contact. One thing I know is that and that has been proven, is our star friends from these many civilizations have very creative ways to contact people.
Right.
And it's not just the lights in the sky, which are, for me, still awesome after all these years. I love to see the ships power up and react to our thoughts and all that. But there are other ways, as Hollis will tell you.
Well, do you want to tell?
I don't know. Maybe at some point you might ask us how we got into this, and that's where we relate the personal experience that we had that was very unique.
Well, I was going to ask. I mean, obviously you saw a need to bring people together, because there are many experiences who have not even discussed or spoken to anyone about, what they've gone through, and I can see this as an environment that they can join and kind of feel safe from any ridicule, and I guess that's part of the plan.
Yes.
I was going to say, and knowing that you're not alone is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this happens to you and it's never happened to anybody you know, maybe you've been made wrong for it. Maybe for your whole life, because there are kids that this stuff happens to, and everybody tells them they're wrong. And then, they get to be an adult, and at some point they discover the group and go, oh, wow, it wasn't just me. And that's a big thing.
Yeah. I hear that every day. This is why it's a community of people. Again, many who will never meet each other, but through social media, we do meet in groups and share stories in a safe place with each other. And it's powerful. It's like anything else. If you've been made wrong for something, as soon as you find one or two other people, your spirits get lifted. You can sit and have a conversation over coffee or tea or whatever, and you don't feel alienated anymore. Mm-hmm. And so what we've created is, and others have created with us, because we're not the only community out there. I think we're the largest. What we've created is a community of all these people who can now share with each other and have support and speak openly about this and even teach it to others and start their own networks, which is wonderful.
And have repeatable experiences. If you're connected to some star visitors, well, they can find you again if you're open to it. But you need to have the support so that you're not afraid because everybody's made you wrong because they've told you all these bad stories, even though your experience was actually fine. It's support, community. Yeah.
I've often wondered, thinking back to my school days, and there was always kids that kind of felt or seemed alienated from particular groups and would kind of almost be a loner, and I think back, and I really feel sympathy for them. And I used to think back and think, maybe things weren't good at home. But now that I've come to understand the nature of this topic, and a lot of experiences that have episodes as kids and can't talk about them, I wonder if some of those kids may have been going through experiences and just couldn't talk about them.
It's a real possibility also for anybody who was born with psychic abilities and was made wrong. Same thing. You learn, shut up, kid.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear it. And, these are communities where you can talk about that stuff.
Yeah. Some of the experiences I speak to, and as kids, they felt they couldn't talk about it, not even to their own parents about the stuff that was going on with them, but they wanted to badly, but they felt the only way to deal with it was to kind of isolate themselves. But they always developed a bond with the ETs that they were having experiences with, and they always even though it may have scared them initially, they looked forward to their next encounter with them.
I guess you find your friends and family where you can, right? Whether it's blood family and friends or cosmic ones, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, what about your experiences then?
Well, what I'm about to relate is something that's similar to many people who come into the community. They've had an initial experience that changes their life. And hopefully for the better when they can talk about it so that they can launch upon, a new adventure. Hollis and I both had initial kind of experiences like that turned out to be very, very positive. And frankly, that's why we're here right now, because of those that changed the course of our lives. So to cut to the chase, it always helps for me to give background to people before telling my encounter, just to help people appreciate where I was coming from, that my experience didn't just happen out of the blue. I grew up in the American Midwest, and as a young man, I was very much interested in the sky and the stars. I read science fiction voraciously, had my own telescope, was also interested in astronomy. So my interest was always out there, as among other things. I was very much a normal kid otherwise, loved baseball and girls and all the usual things. Mm-hmm. But my eyes were on the stars. So that set the stage. for when I picked up a book on UFOs. Maybe I was around 10 years old, and there was a picture of a classic 1950s saucer shape, with a dome on top.
Right.
Because there was a contacting movement, as you know, that was very rich in the 50s and 60s in the United States and in other parts of the world. This book was a product of that. The minute I saw this book, I was smitten, and there were pictures in it, and it all seemed to make sense to me. I wanted more. I read other UFO books that I could. This was in the early 60s. There weren't a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that sets the stage for years and years later. In 2006, when I discovered on the internet here in Northern California, where Hollis and I live, I discovered a group of people that go out and claim they can make conscious contact using meditation and these CE5 techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And it was maybe 4 hours from our house. So I said to Hollis, would you come with me for, this is looks like a 6-week trek experience, retreat, where they teach us to do this thing. And I just suddenly rediscovered my interest in UFOs. And these people say that we can actually contact them. Sounds good to me. Would you like to come along? And what she said was,
well, I'm sure it's real, but no, I've got a business to run. Go, have fun. I support you, but no.
So I went off by myself to have fun. And I have to admit, I went with a sense of a little bit of trepidation, because I grew up with the Hollywood movies that are still being churned out about evil aliens doing this and that and the other thing. And so part of me had a little bit of fear, but the other part was excited like a 5th grader, like, oh boy, I get to try something new. I wonder what's going to happen. So it was with that mix. During that week, we had a lot of experiences. And I would call Hollis every morning back home here and relate to her what the group had experienced the night before. We were seeing the lights in the sky zigzagging around, stationary at times, flashing forth. People would shine their beams up there in the sky and they would respond.
Mm-hmm.
We would see lighted orbs in the trees floating in and other things. So I had a lot to talk to Hollis about every morning, like, listen to what happened the night before. This is amazing. Along about the 4th morning, as I was just getting ready on my phone call to tell her about the previous nights, she stopped me and said,
oh, no, I have a story for you.
And I thought, what could be, she's back home in the Bay Area, what could be cooler than what we saw last night out in the sky? But okay.
So before I say what happened, I should, talk about my background a little bit too. I'm a geek, and I grew up like fascinated with the space program. It's like a 5-year-old having the transistor radio to my ear as John Glenn goes up, that. And I had scrapbooks of this stuff. I was really into it. That's actually why I became an engineer, but that's a whole other story. When I was about 10, my dad gave me Chariots of the Gods, which made perfect sense to me. And I should say, I was not into science fiction, like not remotely. Never watched Star Trek, nothing, right? I read Dune. Dad gave me Dunes. I read Dune. That was good. But other than that, like nothing. I fell asleep during Star Wars.
Wow.
The first Star Wars, and I never went back. So really not into it. Okay. So Kosta's up, at this retreat.
Mount Shasta, Northern California.
And, I'm reading it before I go to bed. I'm sitting in bed, I'm reading, and so it's time to go to bed. So I close up the book, put it on the nightstand, turn out the night light. And as I turn around to like scooch down into bed to go to sleep, I should say my night vision is very, very good. I see better in the dark than most people. Okay, so as my eyes adjust very quickly, there's these 4 little beings standing around the foot of the bed looking at me.
Wow.
With maybe a 5th one behind them, like not completely materialized. They are 3.5 to 4 feet tall. Now, they're standing around they have a kind of large head, skinny neck, skinny shoulders, like the head's too big, like Proportionally, it's way bigger than a human head would be for the size of the body. I assume they are bipedal, but I don't really know because they're at the foot of the bed, so I can't see through the bed. But I assume. And they're looking at me, and honest to God, I was not at all afraid because there were waves of love coming off them, like just love. Who could be afraid of that much love? But I was shocked. Like this had never occurred. Like nobody had told me this could happen. And my mind went blank. And my mind doesn't ever go blank. My mind went blank.
No. Were they communicating with you?
Well, as I sat there, what I hear telepathically, and I should say, I am clairvoyant, I'm clairaudient, and I am a telepath. But I saw these beings with my eyes. That was not clairvoyant vision at all. I know the difference. But I did hear telepathically, very sweet voice go, "Who are you?"
Wow.
And I didn't even have an answer to that. And, so I'm still, my mind is still going blank. And after a while, I think to myself, I should ask them something. What can I ask them? And honestly, like, finally I think I should ask them where they're from. So I think back, where are you from? And very slowly in my mind, I hear this. Arcturus. Now, again, not interested in astronomy, nothing. So the next morning when I relate the story to Kosta, what I say is that a place? And the thing is, now I will say it is very possible that somewhere over the years I had heard the word, but I had no conscious memory of that. So I asked him, is that a place?
Yeah, and I said, yeah, it's a super red giant star in a constellation, and I know I'm mispronouncing this, Butes. But yeah, Arcturus is a thing. It's a star. Books have been written about it, Arcturus, Arcturians, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's a place, and you didn't know that.
Right, and I totally didn't know that.
And what happened then after?
Well, okay, so when we stared at each other some more, and after a while they just kind of vanished. They like faded away, like dematerialized, which today kind of makes me wonder if they were holograms. Like, but I don't, I don't know. There was one other thing. Oh, many years later. So I told the story at somebody else's gathering many years later. And Clifford Stone, who you may have heard of, whose job in the U.S. military was to go to crash retrievals and deal with the beings and whatever, because he was telepathic with them. So I do this, and he was in the audience. And he had to get up in the middle for personal reasons, which I totally understand. So he hadn't heard the story. So I tell him the story. And he goes, "Oh, I have a picture for you." And he goes, "I thought I brought this for my talk, and then I didn't use it. I guess I brought it for you." And he goes and he gets me a painting that another woman had done. And it was these beings, only she saw more detail than I did, but it was absolutely the same beings.
Were they a bluish color?
They were white. They were translucent white.
Okay.
I don't really remember, like maybe some big spaces where there should have been eyes, but like I don't really remember. I just remember these giant heads with kind of pointy chins compared to the size of the bodies. I mean, the bodies look like, an 8-year-old or something.
Did you have any clue why they suddenly appeared to you? I mean, did you unconsciously? Oh, no. Now,
looking back on it, and I mean, this occurred to me probably the next day, he was calling me all the time. And I'm sure he was thinking about me even more than he was calling me. And I'm pretty sure they followed his thoughts to me.
Yeah, that was my next question. Maybe there was a connection with what Kosta was doing.
Sure. I will also say, as evidence for that, about 2 years later, Kosta had met somebody who lived near San Jose, and this guy decided to go to the retreat, and his wife didn't want to go. So the guy got a ride up with me and Kosta, and we got to know him, whatever. And eventually I met his wife, and she basically told the same story of beings, only in her case way more than me. A ton of beings showed up in their living room while he was at the retreat. So I'm sure it's that. They just followed our energy.
So
and what's interesting is as she finished that story, I thinking that I had the cool stories, my jaw was on the ground, figuratively speaking there, and in surprise. At the same time that I was delighted to hear this, because the next thing she had said to me was,
next year I'm coming with you.
Yeah. So anytime on interviews like this where we tell this story, I publicly thank those Arcturians, whoever they are, for showing up, because that's exactly the dramatic kind of encounter that it would have taken for Hollis here to really internalize and have her own experience,
right,
and then want to join me in doing this. And we're together now, years later, still doing this kind of mission. So I'm thankful and grateful to them. Maybe that wasn't their intention, but that was the consequence of it. It got her involved.
And cool stuff still happens. Like, that hasn't happened again, but all kinds of cool stuff still happens.
Well, that sounds eerily similar to an Israeli man that I interviewed recently, Yossi Ronan, and he was back in, I think, 80 or 81. I think he was still a student, and he just went to take an afternoon nap, and during the nap, he thought he was dreaming, and the same type of beings turned up, 4 or 5 of them in his room, and they had a conversation, and then they went. And
Clifford Stone said we call those type 2 grays.
Type 2 grays. Okay. Because there's I've had a kind of a interesting introduction to this topic since my summit back in February, and the greys. The most grief I've copped from, and there hasn't been a lot of grief, but it's usually when I publish a story about the greys, and especially if I report an evil grey alien story. But I recently interviewed Elena Danan, and I'll be bringing that to our audience shortly. But she kind of she's had a lot of experience with the greys, and she says, yes, there are a lot of malevolent type of greys, but there are also benevolent types. So I'll tell people more about that soon. But so, Kosta, did you end up meeting any ETs personally yourself that weekend, or that during your trip?
Well, yes, I did. Not in the being to being sense that Hollis had at close range, but still close range. But an additional experience I had during that week was one night after we had finished our evening of contact. There was a group of 40. Most people left the site where we were, which was at the foot of Mount Shasta. And we had a good night, but most people left, got in their cars, went back to their hotel rooms for the evening. And it was, I want to say, midnight or so. But about 10 of us still hung around at the site, and we're just talking about what we had witnessed, just casually talking before we took off. Someone tugged at my sleeve and pointed off to my right, not, I would say, 6 feet away, at an area near the ground, and said, "Look at that." And I looked, and I had to rub my eyes and make sure that it wasn't shadows or foliage or something that was naturally explainable. It wasn't, because what I saw was a sphere that I now realize was probably maybe 3 or 4 feet in diameter, a sphere. It was just dissolving, or not dissolving, but I don't know, what's the opposite of dissolving? Materializing, thank you. Yeah, materializing out of thin air, like in a slow motion kind of Hollywood effects kind of way, near the ground, floating above the ground, and it was opaque and gray. I couldn't see into it, but it was round. It was a sphere, and I was gobsmacked because all of us were sitting here looking at it as it materialized. I can't say that it was physical, like I could knock on it and I would hear a sound or something, but it was definitely, it was there. And I did want to go over for a brief second. I had the thought, let me go over and touch it and see what happens. And then the other part of me said, no, you idiot. You don't know what kind of energy you're dealing with. Just play it cool and see what happens. Long story short, for the next half hour, we all watched it there, floating noiselessly without any other environmental impact above the ground. One of the people from the other side of the group spoke up and said, I just got a telepathic message from the beings inside of that. And they tell me that they're scientists from another place. They didn't say where, but they're here to study human energy systems. They're doing research. And I thought to myself, well, great, we're somebody's like PhD thesis, right? We're the grass and all that. Nonetheless, this is a great experience. So that's the message they got. And I was real close to this, like I said. The woman next to me had become a friend, and she's a very psychic lady. She's a friend of ours. But we had met during that week, and we're standing next to each other talking. I suddenly noticed that she was quiet and was standing very vertical, still like this with her arms out. I don't know if the camera will show this, straight out like this at right angles, and not moving for half an hour, you know. And I knew something was going on with her, and I didn't want to interrupt it, but I stood like shoulder to shoulder next to her, just in case she showed any signs of distress. I would be right there. At the end of that half hour, she did show some signs. She got kind of wobbly and all that. And I steadied her on her shoulders and asked her, you know, hi, do you know your name? Do you know where you are? Whatever. And she stammered, but she said, you know, I'm okay. I'm just coming back. I asked her what had happened. And here's the story. One of the beings from that sphere that had been floating there approached her psychically, telepathically, and asked her if it could merge with her in order to study her energy system. And to her credit, unlike many of us who would probably run away with our hair on fire when something comes in and says, may I merge with you? You know, it wasn't dark or ominous, but just you don't expect that. But as she tells it, she said, okay, you may do that, but I've got 3 conditions. And the first one is that I remain conscious of what's going on around me, of my surroundings. I don't want to be like knocked out and unaware. And the being agreed to that condition. The second condition was you leave when I tell you to leave, like unmerge when I'm done. You go. The being agreed to that. The third condition was you don't mess with the sex organs. I don't want probes, no touchy-feely, no nothing.
Right.
You know, and the being agreed to that. So imagine the presence of mind. Really? Like most people would like, what? She was negotiating with him and having him sign a little verbal contract here. And that's what was happening during that half hour, unbeknownst to me, while she was standing, not moving, with her arms out. You know, try doing that for half an hour, you know, with your arms out like that, you get fatigued. But that's what she was doing. And at the point where she got really unsteady is the point where internally she said to the being, okay, I'm done. Go now. And it did.
Right.
So she's telling me this story, and then we watched the sphere start dissolving into the background silently, like the way that it came, and it was gone. That changed my life right there. I thought to myself, I just saw something happen that the laws of physics as I know them, and I'm no great physicist, but I'm a scientific kind of guy, should not have happened with this sphere and all that appearing before me in the company of 9 other adults, so that I know I wasn't making this up. They were seeing it too. We talked about it in hushed tones and all that. And then this woman, my friend whom I believe, had this experience, and another guy had a telepathic message, etc. So that wasn't supposed to happen, but it enlarged my world. And I said, I'm nobody special. If this can happen to me, I want to help organize and teach other people that they can do what we just did and have their own kind of really cool interactions. And that's what got me started in creating the
ET Let's Talk was basically born then.
It was. It didn't manifest till 2012, but for the 6 years before that, I was building up to it. Yes.
Yeah, I was staggered to learn the number of people that believe there is life in the universe outside our planet, and I think you mentioned a figure of about 1.3 billion.
There's research that was done by a Dutch internet group that was the largest research of its kind, involving tens of thousands of respondents, and a rigorous scientific method of asking them a lot of questions about extraterrestrial life. They conducted this from December 2015 to, I believe, February of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Largest study of its kind, asking what are your attitudes in different ways about extraterrestrial life. We want to know. Two of the things that came out of that research, two of the questions that popped out at me were, do you believe in star civilizations, that they exist, not just as microbes under a rock, but that are fully developed civilizations? And a certain percentage of the respondents said yes to that question. And of that group that said yes, they asked the next question, which was, well, you believe they exist, should we be communicating with them? And a certain percentage, around half-ish, not exactly, but said yes. So right there, they had given me percentages, they had the numbers. I did a little bit of extrapolation, knowing the population of the Earth and working kind of with their numbers, came up with 1.3 billion adults globally believe in star civilizations and that we should communicate with them. That's gobsmacking. That's a sizable chunk of humanity that is ready for contact, for the People's Disclosure Movement, which is what we're all about, in doing the disclosure ourselves instead of waiting for authorities to do. And those are the people that are coming to ET Let's Talk and learning how to make their own contact and helping this movement really grow. But yeah, that's a staggering number.
Well, what about
half of them are wondering where their next meal's coming from, because half the world is starving.
Right.
But in theory, they're with us.
Yeah. Well, what about the number of experiences? I mean, I used to think, like most people, that people who talked about their experiences were pretty much in the extreme minority. But Kathleen Martin kind of threw some numbers at me, and I nearly fell off my chair. But I mean, we're talking millions upon millions of people that have actually had contact experiences, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. People like Hollis, for example, who never gave kind of a second thought to that, and yet something happened to her up close and personal, which she couldn't deny, because she's a rational, grounded human being, wasn't drinking on drugs or anything. It was very organic and real.
And I saw them with my physical eyes.
Yeah. And you heard them.
Yeah, I heard them telepathically, but I'm used to that for me. Like, not everybody will accept that kind of thing, but I know I do that. But what I'm saying is, if I had only had the telepathic contact, I might have discounted it. But I saw them with my physical eyes. There's no denying that. Yeah,
that's amazing. Why do you think they show up like that? I mean, is there any feedback from the groups in your community that is there any questions that they ask about why are you visiting us?
Everybody's got a different story, and some of them wonder why me, and others have ongoing communication with them. They form friendships, relationships, and some of them get healings, some of them get teachings. So it's kind of all over the map. And I think you can get whatever it is you ask for, whatever you're ready for. If you're afraid of a close communication, well, then you've put up a block and that may not happen. And the experience will only go so far. Maybe you'll see a light in the sky, but maybe that's all it'll ever be, because you're not ready for something closer. So there's a wide range of people's perceptive abilities, their readiness for this, and the relationships they form. And that's wonderful. It's like, even with humans, you're not best buddies with everybody you meet. Some people you hit it off with, some people you're ready to have in your life, other people you don't want, or you're not ready, whatever. This is no different. This is about forming cosmic relationships now. What they told me, those that I'm in touch with, our star friends, From their point of view, you might ask, why are they here? In 2010, I asked them that question through the help of Hollis here, who is telepathically able to connect with them. And they said to me in 2010, we want to create a tipping point on Earth. Please go out and create as many contact teams, star people. They like to be called star people, not aliens. Could create as many star people contact teams as possible in as many places as possible, as quickly as possible. And I go, okay. And they said, because when people see us and experience us in the sky or otherwise, that'll give us permission, because human permission matters to them. Mm-hmm. It'll give us permission, as more people see us, to appear in more places where even more people will see us, giving us permission to appear in more places. And I go, okay, I can see where this is going, kind of, but what's the end game? Why create all these teams? And they said, someday enough people will have seen us all over the world that a tipping point will be created where, moving forward, not about the past, but moving forward from that tipping point, no one, no government, no institution of authority of any kind will be able to cover up our presence any longer. They've done it in the past for decades, but when enough people have seen and experienced, cat's out of the bag, or the ET's out of the spaceship or something, or the star person is.
Right.
That's me saying that, not them. So I said, okay, that's what a people's disclosure is. And that's one message I want to get out as I talk to audiences like yours, Dean, is that stop waiting for the authorities to make that announcement, whether it's a president, a premier, a prime minister, an autocrat, whatever, telling you what you already know. If you made the kind of contact we and thousands of us have made, you already know they're here. What are you waiting for that? That they're going to show up and they're going to make that announcement and say, hey, folks, we've been lying, making you wrong, institutionalizing you, destroying your careers, breaking apart your families for 70 years. Sorry about that, but
yeah,
you were right all along. They have been here. Sorry about that. Forgive us. They're not going to do that. They may leak certain things, and there's talk about, slow disclosure and all that, and that's baloney for me.
Yeah.
We've already had a people's disclosure. My star friends did say that in 2019 we reached the tipping point that I've been talking about. Too many people have seen this movement is now too big and has too much momentum to be stopped by anything, because our destiny is cosmic humanity. Our destiny is to really open up and bring their presence on Earth to work with us when the timing is right and the situations are right. So the people's disclosure has happened. And I tell people, take your power back from the authorities. Stop being on your bended knee, praying, waiting for them to give you that word. Take back your power and say, I've gone from being a believer into being a knower now. And, you're in the past. I'm part of the future now.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's and I'm glad you said that, because I've published a few articles now about the CE5 community being the key to ultimate disclosure, and that's where I get pushback from the mainline UFO community. And I'm just kind of wondering, is that something you experience as well? I mean, is there? I don't think jealousy is the right word, but there just seems to be some reason why CE5 and mainline haven't clicked together yet, when they perhaps should, because we're all basically working for the same goal.
There are a bunch of different possibilities. I'm not claiming to know anything here, but I think you have to acknowledge, if you're to acknowledge that the star visitors are here, you have to acknowledge that they have technology that we don't have. And once you go there, if you allow that technology, and I personally believe a lot of it is spiritual technology, not physical technology, although there may be plenty of that too. Once you allow that they have technology that right now humans don't have, then you have to say, well, if there is more technology that could come, that will upend our power structures on Earth. And so if you have power now, which is probably more powerful currency even than money, if you have power now, you probably don't want those star visitors.
No.
You might lose your power.
No. No, I understand. In fact, I had someone tell me recently that basically does this for a living, and almost wishing that there would be no disclosure, because they love writing about this stuff, and they love the mysterious aspect of it, and they, it's a mystery, but. The little bits and pieces we've had in the last 3 years, the Tic Tac videos, the Pentagon admitting that off-road vehicles are in their possession, and I wrote an article just kind of warning that maybe that's just a distraction, and ultimate disclosure really does rest with the CE5 community. It's with the people having the experiences every day that are already having disclosure, and if they number in the millions and millions and continue to grow and grow, well, what are they hiding from us? What are they trying to suppress from us?
It's the technologies again.
Yep.
If you are the materialist who believes that the speed of light is a hard stop for everything, then you are envious maybe of civilizations that somehow are coming from a lot of different places that are doing it not at the speed of light and not with technologies that we at least consciously know of. So there's a lot that can be lost by as Hollis was saying, by the current power structure. They may bring medical technologies. In fact, I know people who have had cancers cured by encounters, as just one example. There are healing technologies that would wipe out all parts of our death-oriented health industry, just for example. So their presence is, what's the word? I know the word. It's not going to be welcome because, like Hollis said, name the power structure and it's going to be threatened by something they bring. The religions of the world that control their flocks. And I'm not necessarily anti-religion, but I'm anti-control and totalitarianism when it's applied in any group. But they will be upended by whatever we learn from the spiritual technologies of some of these visitors. Free energy, for example. Just imagine what your life would be like if, number one, imagine how better off the planet would be without fossil fuels destroying it in front of us, and how liberating it'll be when free energy is free, non-polluting, and it's forever, so that we don't have to work a 40-hour work week, just as an example.
Well, the energy component comes out of everything,
right?
That you buy or use, right? Transportation, there's no energy component. Keeping your house warm, keeping the lights on, food, which comes through transportation, nothing, It just changes, just that alone, just free energy alone changes the power structure.
And this will unleash the human creative spirit, because the many hours that people now toil literally in the soil or in a cubicle somewhere making a living, when the economic systems of the world are more flattened by this energy component that has been removed, we won't have to work as hard. Maybe 10 hours a week. I'm just making this up, but we won't have to slave the way we are. It'll free the human spirit to be creative. We won't be fighting wars for fossil fuels, for example. Imagine the upliftment that will bring to all of humanity, not to worry anymore whether a son or a daughter, a mother or a father is going to go to war and destroy other people's sons and daughters and mothers and fathers. Again, this will liberate the human spirit in so many ways. Poverty could end. People will get along better when they're not fighting for what they perceive are limited resources. Great art will be produced. I mean, I have a friend who has a Facebook group whose name I forget. Forgive me, Celia, because I really want to plug it right now. But she's
dreaming the future or something.
It's like dreaming the future. She asks people to say, to join in and just make posts about what would your ideal world be like. if ETs brought technology, and lets people just play with that. Well, that's kind of what I'm offering to people right now. Just imagine and put the positive thoughts out there and create the world you want that can be had by those who are from these other civilizations who really do want to land and be with us when we're far more ready than we are right now.
Yeah.
Because they will share these technologies.
From the feedback that you get from the various groups, I mean, do these star people talk about what kind of influence they've had over over humanity's history?
I haven't asked that specifically, but I could. I think that if you know any researchers whose research that you trust, who's already been reporting this kind of stuff, maybe in shows on the History Channel or whatnot. And but by the way, there's some garbage that's out there that I don't agree with about ancient aliens and what they've done. But mixed in with that is genuine stuff. So though I haven't asked personally, I think the evidence already is there, and people who are far better at research than I am, because I'm not really a researcher.
I mean, just one example, right? The Nazca lines.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't have created those from the ground. You would not have been able to have the perspective to create those. No human would have. So how else does that happen? Just one.
Yeah.
So the history is there, and it's been provided by human beings good ones who've written books, made the movies, and have provided the evidence. Right. So I refer to them about that. Yeah.
What's your belief about? And then you tell me that you're not religious in a more. It's more a spiritual thing. But what's your thinking about God and these star people? I mean, are they one and the same?
Oh, no. In fact, one of the early communications they gave to us was right away they said, do not think of us or consider us as gods. Apparently, we've done that in the past, and human beings and religion and gods don't do so well.
Mm-hmm.
Think crusades, think inquisitions. So the first thing they said was, don't think of us as gods. Think of us as elder brothers and sisters and cousins. We are family. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. Who would want some cousin you kind of didn't know exist and found out they exist in some faraway country suddenly announcing themselves and saying, hey, I've got some cool things for you to look at and had some neat experiences, and let's get together. That's what friends and family is like. And I like the way that the framework they put that in, not the God and religion thing.
Right. It sounds to me like they're very, very gently, ever so gently, trying to nudge us in the right direction to kind of move on from where we are.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me too.
Yeah. They know they're dealing with a very diverse human population full of divisions, prejudices, all kinds of grievances against each other, wars. I mean, looking at it from their point of view, and there are many civilizations, and I'm sure they have fascinating discussions among themselves, like, how do we get through to this group and that group? This one hates that one. How do you even prepare a program to reveal yourself to the world when most humans are too busy fighting with each other or fighting with survival or whatever, distracted by so much? I don't have an answer to that, but I give them props for their trying, I think.
What I keep thinking about, we had a friend who is she's not in a physical body anymore, but she was very clear that she was not really from here. And at night in her lucid dreaming, she would go up to a ship where her father was. And she would say, get me out of here. These people are crazy. That's what your question made me think of. And she did get out because she just couldn't take it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, but she told us the story that her father would then kind of figuratively pat her on the head and said, remember, you volunteered to come here.
Right.
They need what you have. And she go, oh, okay, I'll go back.
Right.
Until she decided not to.
Yeah.
That's a colorful story. we had no reason not to believe her. She was a woman of many talents and experiences.
Many talents.
So maybe that answers your question a little bit or not.
Well, yeah, it does. I'm just thinking also, I mean, the interest they have in us and the well-being that they're hoping that, that we'll eventually experience. Do you think it might have something to do because that we are them? I mean, are we a seeded race?
I think we are. There's a lot of research and a lot of books written about this. I don't pretend to know all the details, but my God, if they're visiting us this easily now, and we have evidence they've been in our past, archaeological and otherwise, if you go back far enough in history, why wouldn't they have been part of seeding programs? So, and in fact, they said, we are family. They didn't mean it like in a figurative kind of way, virtual hug here, folks. I think they literally meant we are family. And I'll tell you a story. When I heard that phrase from them, it was again through Hollis making the telepathic communication with them, the connection, not me asking questions. A short while after that, hearing that we are family thing, Hollis was in another city on some family business, and I was driving on a highway to go visit her, to go stay with her. And I was in the left lane of the car doing 80 miles an hour, my usual. You didn't hear that. Breaking the speed limit, oh my. And I was kind of in a zone because there weren't that many cars on the highway and there was long stretches and I knew the road. So I was kind of zoned out and just thinking about this experience where they had contacted us and told us to create all these contact teams and not to think of them as gods, but as elder brothers, sisters, and cousins, all going through my mind. My reverie was broken on my right side, on the lane to the right of me. This huge semi-trailer truck went speeding past me like I was standing still. Well, not kind of like, yeah, really fast. In a lane he should not have been in, at a speed should not have been going, but who am I to judge? I was broken up too.
Right.
But that broke me out of my reverie, like, whoa, where'd that guy come from? Followed by a second later, one moving slower that was following that one, but again slower, went by me. And at a speed where now I was totally alert, and I watched it go by me. And as the back end of it, it went past me on my right, but I got to see the back end of it. And in the same way that sometimes people who are pranksters will see a dirty windshield on a parked car, and they'll take their finger and they write in block letters, "Wash me." Mm-hmm. At least pranksters like me used to do that as a kid.
Yep.
But there were block letters written on the back of the trailer, huge letters, because as I'm looking up and it's passing me, I go, there's writing there, and it says, "ETs are family," written on there in big block letters, and then the semi's gone. And I'm going, WTF? Either this is some truck driver's twisted idea of a joke, knowing that I just had this experience. No, this is not a coincidence. Somehow they managed to do that. It said, "ETs are family," written on the truck, and then it was gone out of my life. Wow. And I just said, thank you, folks. You made a point. I'm paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating enough, Kosta, but the fact that you were doing 80 miles an hour and they went straight by you, I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Look, the People's Love Alliance and the People's Disclosure Movement, are they one and the same or two different groups?
They're two sides of the same coin. I like to refer to them as the vision that I have of the future. The People's Disclosure Movement is us making contact with the cosmic civilizations here, and that's proceeding apace very well. It's an unstoppable movement, and its point is to help someday bring a golden age to Earth. I do believe, and I think our star friends believe in the potential that we have as humans. Despite all the divisions and the wars, they see a potential there because maybe in their own past, they have been where we were and they made it through. They broke through, didn't destroy themselves. They went to the stars. I think they're here to help us. They love us. So the People's Disclosure Movement is the cosmic part of where I see the vision of us being able to forge our own future. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So that's us becoming cosmic humanity. Now, the other part of that, the People's Love Alliance, is the part where the ETs say, well, we're allowed to help you, with your permission, solve the problems that you can't solve. We're here. But in general, you basically have to learn how to get along with one another. You've got to do the heavy lifting, the work, because that is your spiritual growth as a species. And you are allowed that. We don't want to interfere with that part. So the People's Love Alliance is the research I've done to identify large groups of human beings who are actually doing wonderful, life-affirming, forward-looking, progressive things to get us to work together as a loving, evolved human family. And the mass media will not reflect this to you because, as you may know, they thrive on fear, on competition and all that. Maybe that'll change someday, but what I'm trying to highlight with the People's Love Alliance is the fact that groups like Avaaz.org, AVAAZ.org, is a people's movement from every country of the world, powered by people, 60 million strong across the globe, who take on projects to help each other in each other's countries. When someone needs a certain campaign to end indigenous peoples being rolled over by corporations, they put out the call in the Avaaz community. 60 million people send petitions, contact politicians, get into the back rooms where the discussions are going, and help each other solve problems. And they've been doing this since 2007. They're just one example of the People's Love Alliance that you don't hear about, but once you connect into them, you find groups, other groups as well, who are under the radar of the mass media that are creating a better world. And the truth is, they're far stronger than what we see the media presenting to us. And we have to remind ourselves that there are real problems we're facing that we have to solve. But we also have to be reminded there's a lot of good in the world. 99.9% of human beings really do want peace, and they're working together to get it. I have a Facebook group called Good News Every Day, and we highlight good news stories of groups like Avaaz, the cultural creatives, the new group of world servers, men and women of goodwill. They're in their tens and tens of millions. We highlight stories just to show that they're there and what they've done. Yeah. And stories all over the map. They're personal, they're on a great political scale, whatever. They're good news, just to make you have good fuel in the morning when you get up before the news from mass media tries to bring you down and depress you. So that's the People's Love Alliance. It's active, and it's the other part of the vision I have, and there's evidence out there for it. There's a lot of people.
And the People's Disclosure Movement is basically what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it is. We achieved that disclosure, like I said, in 2019. We achieved that tipping point, but now there's 1.2 billion people or something that are waiting to hear, are open-minded to hear what we have to offer. And I don't know about you, but that's exciting. This is the most exciting and dangerous period in all of human history. And those of us, Hollis and me, our friends, you, who have our eyes on the stars and know that there's more than just what's on Earth and a better world, we're at the vanguard of that. This is what history will be writing about in the future. And we're not doing this out of ego. We're doing it out of this survival, and that we can thrive afterwards. And not just survive, but we can have a golden age. I know that sounds idealistic, but if someone isn't building it and have their feet on the ground and making allies, it's not going to happen. And so we have our eyes on the star, but our feet on the ground.
Okay. Well, last question before we wind up. What are your thoughts? I mean, I'm just amazed at at how close, I feel that Hollywood gets to the truth about our star friends. I mean, several movies, the movies that seem to, the movies that I seem to like are the ones that seem to have a message within them. I just wanted to maybe ask the question, Do you think there are producers and directors in Hollywood that are experiencers and are getting these type of Look, for example, a movie like Mission to Mars. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's basically about the seating thing at the end. There's the twist at the end, and a movie like a classic. I mean, I like the original and also the remake, The Day the Earth Stood Still. That's exactly the same message that you've been preaching in this. Do you think there are experiences in Hollywood that are getting these messages as well?
Absolutely. I know Grant Cameron has written a book. Now, this is not about producers, but it's about creatives, musicians. I forgot the title. Forgive me, Grant, if you're watching this, the title of your book, but everyone should read it because he talks about musicians, many of whom you've heard, from the Moody Blues to Yes, to groups today, who are experiencers and some who say they've gone aboard ships, some who have met star people, and then they put it in their music. So if that's happened in the musical world, why wouldn't other part of the creative community, producers and such, like Gene Roddenberry? Mm-hmm. Some people say that there's evidence that he was connected with groups that were giving him information as he was creating Star Trek. What I want to ask Hollis here, because you brought it up, is her reaction, because she was not the Hollywood movie, science fiction movie person, and yet we went to see the one with the vertical ships. Oh, God. I'm doing lousy with remembering names.
Arrival?
Arrival, yeah. Yes. To get her reaction to that, because she's not that science fiction person, and yet there was that movie with a positive message, and not your typical eat 'em up.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I just kind of remember being not all that impressed because this was all obvious to me. But, I mean, look at it this way. Out of 1.3 billion people, what's chances some of them aren't working in Hollywood?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, I mean, what you couldn't get a more powerful medium for getting disclosure out there in a soft way than through Hollywood itself, could you?
Right. Tell stories. People love stories.
Yeah.
They tell stories.
Well, and the thing is, the researcher who created the research that led to the 1.3 billion number that I came up with cites the fact that he released his research to time at the same time as a release of one of the Star Wars movies. Because he said what made his research possible, what prepared the mass consciousness, were positive things like Star Trek, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, the positive ones that had opened people's minds. And so he openly acknowledged, I'm doing this research because 40 years ago, 30 years ago, not enough people were open enough. But because of all these movies, some of the positive ones, I now have enough of a group that I can do my research with, and that's wonderful. That's evidence that despite the evil alien kind of movies from Hollywood, mm-hmm. what's broken through are some of the more positive ones, and have actually affected other people in a good way. So,
and anyway. I think you know, a Mission to Mars is. I mean, if you get a chance to watch it, certainly watch it. The message at the end. There's a line in the movie at the end when they finally realize, you know, who we really are, and it's they're us, we're them, and it's just a great message.
Thank you for that. I said to Hollis.
Now I want to see it.
Now I want to see it. And then I also said, spoiler alert, but okay, I knew this anyway.
Perhaps I should have warned you. But anyway, guys, look.
All good. Now I want to see the movie.
No, I believe that anyway, so there's not news to me.
Yeah. Well, it's been fantastic chatting with both of you. Been meaning to do this for some time, and thanks to Mike, we've finally come together, and let's hope it's not the last time.
No,
for sure.
No, we look forward to further conversations anytime you want, Dean. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to tell our stories.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Kosta, Makreus and Hollis Polk. Their website is etletstalk.com. Alien healing can conjure up images of a bright white light with affected or injured areas of the human body suddenly returning to normal. Or an ET hand touches the forehead of a human and whatever illness they are suffering from is automatically cured. That's the way they occur on television or film at least. Truth is, an alien healing is not a myth, and one man who has spent plenty of time researching ET healings over many years is UFO researcher and author Preston Dennett. Have people reported praying before the healings take place?
Yeah, that does occur. It's not super common, and initially I thought it was very rare. I only had like 2 or 3 cases. Now that I've got a much bigger database, there's a good dozen cases that support that, or that go that way. One case that comes to mind involved a lady who was diagnosed with renal failure. She was having a lot of trouble going to the bathroom and went to her family doctor, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you need dialysis. Your kidneys have completely shut down." And she went home and prayed, and she called everyone she knew and asked them to pray, and just kind of praying to angels, really, and was instead visited by short humanoids who sort of rubbed her abdominal area. They weren't angels by any means, but instead appeared to be ETs, and healed her. She went to the doctor the next morning, who was very shocked. He says, "Well, you appear to be fine." And she told everyone she was healed by angels, though that's not what she believes, because about a month later, she was taken again, this time apparently on board a craft, where she saw the same humanoids who showed her kidneys and said, "Look, your kidneys look fine." This was with an instrument that they use, which kind of displays your organs in full color, in full living color. And then they showed her liver. They said, "Look, there was dark spots all over it. And these dark spots are bad. You need to stop drinking Diet Coke. It's damaging your liver."
Wow.
Is what they told her.
Preston Dennett, author of the landmark book, The Healing Power of UFOs, has been documenting and researching healing cases for more than 25 years and is the world's leading expert on UFO healing accounts. That's coming up next week on Aliens Revealed Live. Thanks for being with us, and don't forget to check out our site at arlhub.com, arlhub.com. And as always, keep looking upwards and take care.